take these chords. Sound familiar? They're from a song that has over 500 million streams on Spotify, and the secret? It's not the chords, but the execution. Because how they're used in this song is what turns them into a total earworm. They come from Yes and by Ariana Grande, produced by Max Martin and Ilya, and what's crazy is that the chorus is really just 4 elements: chords, drums, bass, and melody. But it's how those 4 elements interact in the way they're structured, repeat, and resolve, a way that many call melodic math. Everything is designed to add up. So today we're breaking down the production behind this chorus piece by piece. So the chords are playing more of a role than just harmony. They're the foundation to the vocal melody, which goes like this.
Yes, and say that shit with your chest, and be your own fucking best.
So serving the vocal, you have this 8-bar chord loop that goes. Which is essentially an AB, 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 CD rhyming structure, and it's no coincidence that Ariana's vocal melody follows a similar call and response structure, always alternating between the yes and say that shit with your melody parts, but let's look at that later. So when it comes to the chords, there's also some call and response, with the first chord sounding pretty jazzy. Then moving up to the 5, which sounds a little more tense and doesn't fully resolve. Now we repeat that 3 times in order to make the chords really memorable, and that's how we work toward the resolution in the last 2 bars, through the 4 and the 3 chords. Now, what makes these chords really interesting isn't just how they change from one to the next, but the rhythm of how they're played. They're short, staccato, and groovy, almost making them as memorable as the vocal melody itself. So yes, the chords are here to serve the vocal melody, but their rhythm makes them interesting enough to work even when there's no singing on top, which is typical Max Martin. Now, as for sound design, what we have is this kind of glassy synth that has a bright attack, and it's really 3 different layers: a gospel piano from Keyscape, a plug from the Jupiter 8 emulation, and the glassy distorted wavetable from Serum, all running through the same mix bus to give it that lo-fi imperfect sound. There is some chorus happening here, as well as reverb and this tremolo effect, which creates this gated sound. Wait, let me actually set the intensity of this tremolo to 100% so you can hear what it's doing. I mean, that's obviously too much, but adding a little bit of this makes the sound slightly more interesting. So here's our chords if we disable all the effects. And here's with all the effects. Okay, so the drums are very minimal on their own, but they play a huge role in the bounce of this song. Typical house groove. So the samples are nothing fancy really. Some are literally stock FL sounds with a bit of splice. Now we see a lot of 909 action here. We have claps and snares layered together to create a full sounding groove. Some open and closed hats to give it that house sound. There's also a crash at the beginning that hits every 8 bars for more impact. But most importantly, we have a 909 snare that hits on the 2 and 4, and what really makes it groove are these filler notes in between. Like, they add swing and make the rhythm come alive, as you can tell when we disable the filler notes. completely different feel, right? It's subtle details like these that can really elevate a track. So if we play the drums solo, they sound pretty basic. But if we play them with the chords on top, we get this. Pretty sick, right? So now we need some bass. The bass in the track follows the chord's root notes and plays a very groovy rhythm. It has a similar punch and fullness to something you'd hear in an Oliver Heldens track. Very clean and round. A few of the notes play offbeat, which gives this subtle syncopation, basically causing a shift in the rhythm that makes the listener surprised by disrupting the movement. Then in the fourth bar, there's a little extra bass note that breaks up the pattern and creates a variation. And in bar 8, there's a more noticeable change with a faster and higher variation that resets your ear and leads you back into the first bar again. So this is one of those things that can be easily overlooked from a first listen, but it's a critical component to why this song never gets boring, considering how repetitive it really is. The bass is what keeps it interesting. So what's going on here is 3 layers. There's an harmonic sub from Serum, which gives us our initial attack and bounce while acting as our bass foundation. It's really a sine wave with some distortion and hyperdimension that give the synth its weight and character. Then there's a bass patch from Analog Lab that has more of a talking quality and adds harmonics and click to our bass. And finally we have a really distorted saw square patch from Serum that adds a layer of grit and dirtiness to our synth stack. So here's what our bass sounds like together with the chords and the drums. Okay, now let's talk vocals. Ariana's Yes and melody is the main event, right? And everything else is really built to work around it. So there's a little vocal chop in the background that plays similar to a filler melody. It's really tucked into the beat discreetly and it operates more like a texture. Now when it comes to the actual chorus vocal melody, what makes it work so well is how Ariana's vocal is structured into a call and response loop. You get
yes, and
then there's a space,
say that shit with your chest,
then another space, and then the same thing 2 more times until it resolves with
keep moving like what's next, yes, and
so the back and forth between the vocal really creates a conversation, and as mentioned earlier, it flows perfectly with the structure of the chord progression. So when Ariana's final line hits, it really closes that loop. Finally, there's some supporting layers that glue the chorus production together, which is a counter melody and chords that play during the final 2 bars of the chorus. So the counter melody sounds like a bell synth that plays a really simple melody. But why it works so well is because it's playing notes from the pentatonic scale. So we're in C sharp major, and within that scale there's a subset of notes: C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, G sharp, and A sharp, which go perfectly with basically any chord, which by the way can be very useful if you don't know what notes to use for your melody. Now the synth itself is made up of 2 sounds. There's a really similar sounding patch in Serum's default sounds under their plugs called Big Bells. However, it fell a bit short in the attack and body, so it's being layered with a dolceola sound to give it that extra texture and sharpness, preventing it from feeling flat. And finally there's the chord synth that plays the final 2 chords of our chorus, but sustained rather than short. So this sound is made up of 2 pads, a saw pad and an 80s brass patch. that together sound like this. And they work because the chords offer contrast and resolution in comparison to the staccato rhythm that we got used to in the first 6 bars. By the way, these 2 synths come from our Afterlight sample pack, which has a ton of loops, MIDI files, one-shots, presets, and even 5 complete FL Studio session files for you to learn from, linked in the description below. Okay, so let's now listen to the final result of the chorus. So yeah, the production here isn't too complicated. The synths are minimal, a lot of the samples are simple, but the beauty is in the way it's all put together. Like, everything's designed to serve the melody, specifically Ariana's vocal. And that's really the Max Martin playbook. Let the vocals sing and make everything about the melody. Super simple, but super sticky. If you found value in this video, make sure to subscribe, download the free session below, and I'll see you next time.